Hello again, everyone. I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat, and you are joining us for the Gun Cranks. I'm here with my co-host Tom McHale, the editor of American Handgunner magazine, and Roy Huntington, our special projects editor. And I forgot to mention, this is the Gun Cranks, the show that has been proven 250% less hypocritical than Alec Baldwin. Thanks for joining us.
I didn't pull that trigger.
Yeah, except that he did.
I'd like to see a source on that number.
Okay, I'll get back with you sometime soon on that.
See a sore on the number?
Wow. Okay, let's have a deep cleansing breath, get the show back on track. We've actually got a serious topic today, which we'll spindlefold and mutilate in a non-serious way, of course, but it's a question that I think all of us get asked all the time, and it is, what's like the number one thing you should do to a fighting gun? Yeah, that is such a loaded question because there's really a lot of things you could or should do to a fighting gun, but people usually want to pin you down as you're some kind of expert. So what's the one thing I should do to my gun? I normally let the assembled cast start. I'm going to start on this one, and if we're talking pistols, I would say an optic. I have become a recent convert to television screens on top of guns, and we've talked about it a couple of times on the Gun Cranks. It's been harder than you know what to get me to shoot with an optic. But once this little pea brain, that little BB rattling around in there finally got it, oh my gosh, I'm shooting better than I have been in years. I mean, crazy good. I just had my my annual yearly qualification for my retired officer's card, shot 100%, wasn't even trying. It was great. And I really, truly blame it on the optic. For someone who has aging eyes, the optic is the way to go. And you young guys, you're already using optics and you're used to, playing video games and pew pew and all that stuff. It's easy for you. It's harder for us old guys, but once you get it, it changes everything. So that's my one modification I tell when people ask is get an optic and learn to use it, and it'll make a big difference to you. Everybody rush in there at once.
To a fighting gun?
One modification.
Load it. All right.
I'd like to see some scientific.
I'm out of here. Show's over.
Can I see some documentation on that fact?
Well, you asked. I mean, come on.
Okay.
And I know why you went first, by the way, so you could steal the answer from everybody else.
Absolutely.
But I will add on to that. Because I like optics. I use them all the time. But I also have a number of guns without optics that will never have an optic for whatever reason. The sights are my first thing that I always do, the iron sights every single time. And probably the same reason as you just described. My eyes are getting, more importantly for this, slower. So I can see sights without my glasses on or with, but it takes longer to develop a good sight picture with iron sights. My eye muscles are steam powered now, so that you got to fire them up, throw some coal in there, and eventually they'll get focused where they need to be. So I've kind of been graduating towards the big dots on, and there's one from Novak's called a mega dot, I believe. Similar.
It's just idea. A golf ball, right? You just put a golf ball in the front of your pistol.
Yeah, you duct tape it on the front there, and it works like a champ. No, but they work swell, and you'll find an article on our website. I did a little science with them at one point. Can you still shoot precisely with big dot style sights? Yes, you can. I shot groups at 25 yards with big dots, and you can get 2-inch groups all day long or less if you're good. So it's possible. But that's the first thing I do.
Well, let me jump in here before Roy takes his turn. I completely agree with you, and most of my iron-sighted pistols are wearing big dots. And it's really a continuum of the whole optic, big dot. Basically what we're saying is we're getting old and crusty eyes, and you got to get that sighting system down. But something I was reminded of, somebody told me, is you still need to learn to shoot iron sights. And it's the analogy of, you got an automatic transmission, you still need to learn how to drive a stick shift. So I thought that was pretty good advice. So, ceding the floor to Roy.
Other than the obvious of get training, but that's not really a modification to your gun. But the modifications to your gun don't do you any good unless you've been trained. So, who here has ever picked up a gun with a red dot sight and had the red dot not work? Just something to think about. That's all.
Nick raised his hand too.
Yeah, Nick, our producer, raised his hand. Just something to think about. So I'm a firm believer of iron sights, period, on my defensive handgun. Chances are good if I'm going to engage somebody, it's going to be close enough I can see him anyway. So, but I think the most important thing you could do for your defensive gun is make sure it has a really good trigger. And the difference is huge. I mean, if you get a Glock, a Hellcat, one of those kind of guns and shoot it, the triggers are adequate. And you'll struggle. If you put an aftermarket Apex, trigger or one of the others in, suddenly it changes everything, because you can actually press, feel the wall, feel the brake, and repeats consistently. And that kind of consistent trigger press is, I think, the primary thing. So that's what I do to all my guns, and I would encourage everyone. And if you like red dots, put a red dot on it, but put a trigger in it too.
especially a small polymer gun. And for example, I carry a Glock 43X and a Springfield XDS quite a bit. And both of those have benefited tremendously from the Apex upgrade. It's super easy to do. You can do it at home yourself. You order a kit, you drop it in, and your trigger is order of magnitudes better. And on a small gun, that makes a lot of difference.
You're exactly right. I had an LCP2 and then an LCP Max, and they're different actions. Boy, once you drop one of the trigger kits in there, suddenly the 80-yard gong is consistently doable, and it just makes a huge difference. And so anyway, I agree with you guys about the big dots. I put a set on those on my wife Susie's duty SIG in it, and she went from struggling to qualify to acing it because she could see the sights, after. And I agree with you that you can be as precise as you need to be with them. But the red dots, I think we're going to part ways.
Wow. Well, those are some great ideas. Now let's switch it up. Let's go long guns. And I'll start out on this one. And I've got, it may seem like an unusual choice, especially to the lesser experienced, lesser trained, but I really believe this. Whether you're carrying a shotgun or a rifle, which granted, I'm probably one of 4 people in the United States that still carry shotguns for a defensive weapon, but for whatever, if you've got a long gun, I think you got to have a sling. And the reason I say that is they don't come equipped with a sling generally. And with a long gun, if you're going to be moving, climbing, going through doors, you may have to get kids out of the way. You may have to do a lot of different things. And a long gun is just not something you can tuck in a holster. There's no such thing. So what are you going to do if you need 2 hands free with a long gun? You have to do something with it. Otherwise, you just got to lay it on the ground and then it's completely out of play. So a sling on a fighting long gun, you got to have it. That way you can keep it on your person as you're moving through whatever problems you have to deal with. So that would be my first choice for a long gun. Get a sling, even if it's just an Ellie Mae rope belt, a piece of clothesline, get some kind of sling on it.
Well,
don't all jump in there at once.
No, I was deferring to Roy. I'm still kind of stunned on his handgun answer. See, I figured he would say upgrade from flintlock to cap and ball, to the percussion caps.
Wow.
But
if you really feel it
still
necessary.
So I'm still kind of
that's going to leave a mark.
Kind of shocked by that.
Ray's still recovering.
One of you guys,
he'll leave a mark.
Some articles from Taffin about percussion pistols for self-defense. And I thought, well, if I had to, I suppose,
Yeah.
With my rifles, I agree with you, Brent. Clint Smith always said a sling on a rifle is like a holster for your pistol, and he's exactly right. And but I think if it's a defensive rifle, the single most important modification you can put on it is a really bright light. Mm-hmm. And I have 2 rifles that are specifically set up as defensive rifles here, and they both have 2 lights on them on the end, and they have iron sights for all the reasons that we've been talking about. So, so that's what I would do. If you have a Model 94 Winchester that is your defensive rifle, guess what? You can put a rail on it, and you can put a light on it because I've done it. Or a double barrel shotgun. I zip tied a light on the barrel of my double barrel shotgun in the garage. So I did. We made a video about that. I'll try to remember.
I'm surprised you didn't do a little home welding on that. You got the welding gear, right?
I tried to keep it simple, but it was zip tied, and it worked great. I'll try to remember to ask Nick to put the link to the video at the bottom of this. So, all right, Tom, what would you do?
Well, I'm gonna say it depends. So if we're talking an inside rifle, I would agree with you 100% on the light. I actually like a light laser combo. A rifle is just a whole nother animal indoors with a laser on it. It's just phenomenal, the flexibility it gives you. But with the bright light, you'll still see the laser. For outside use, my biggest thing is low magnification. I think a lot of people over magnify their rifles, and you get into these limited field of view things. A rifle with a variable magnification that goes from basically a red dot to something 4, 6, 8 powered is a really nice thing to have, and you can reach out surprisingly far with a good low magnification optic. So that's my 2 cents. But then again, I'm American Handgunner. What do I know about rifles, right?
That's right. He's not qualified.
Nothing.
He shouldn't even be invited to talk about this,
Yeah.
I watched a video. Come on.
You know what, though? You're right. I'm going to add one more thing. I have a couple of rifles with a 2.5 power, and another one has a 4 power, original, like 1950s steel Weaver scopes. And you know what? If you can see it, you can hit it. I mean, it's amazing. Even at 2.5 power.
You can often hit it better with a little lower magnification.
And you can see it, and you can shoot them with both eyes open, which I thought is pretty amazing. So, all right, this was fun.
I actually think Tom has brought up, we got a whole new gun crank show there. How much is too much? Because whether you're talking tactical situation or hunting, especially. And, I've had, in my younger days, bought the most magnifying scope I could get, and you throw it up there and you see hair. Okay, where is that hair located? Exactly. And then you start scrambling to lower the power, and meanwhile the animal's just going. So I've not heard a lot of those kind of
leaves because you can't find it.
Yeah. Oh, that happens a lot. And talk to any guide, and that's like their number one pet peeve. It's like, do you see the deer? No. It's by the tree. There's a tree? Yeah, okay. I'm going to sit down and have a smoke. When you figure it out, shoot it if it's still there. So I think that's pretty interesting. But I will say, Roy, I was really torn between the sling and a light because all of my long guns have both. And I consider a light absolutely required on a fighting gun. So I think we all pretty much agree there. We just took different ways of getting there. Make sure you tell us what you think is the most important thing to have on your fighting guns. That's why they have those comments down below on YouTube. So let us know what you've got on your fighting guns and what you consider the absolute most important thing. And if somebody says like a steamboat whistle or, a pasta maker, yeah, I want to see pictures of that because I've seen some guns that pretty close to that, Anyway, guys, any parting thoughts?
Think we did it.
Okay. I guess we're done then, aren't we? Well, make sure you check out AmericanHandgunner.com, GunsMagazine.com, AmericanCop.com, the Guns Magazine podcast available on any of the major podcast directories, and we also have great special interest publications under the American Handgunner and Guns brands. Tom rides herd on those, and I believe you got the Old West just came out, right?
Yeah, it should be out right about the time you see this. So if it's not, check out the DIY. Actually, check out the DIY anyway. It's chock full of great tips.
Chock full o' tips.
Chock full o' tips. Yep.
That sounds vaguely
if you read
obscene.
Enough of the DIY issues, you can be like Roy Huntington. He is a professional shop guy. So, he's got mills and lathes, and I can't even fathom the tools he's got. So
I know you guys didn't see this, but in a teaser for the podcast I did recently, it was a video one, and I put up with Roy a little label. It said I was like the adequate host, and it was Roy, super expert. And what I was doing was channeling the old Wile E. Coyote cartoons. Remember when they'd go to stop motion and it said, Wile E. Coyote, super genius. Well, that's Roy's our version of Wile E. Coyote. He knows it
super
all.
DIY.
I'm proud to be Wile E. Coyote. So
maybe that's why you're always busy chasing them out in your pasture. So
that's a whole other show right there.
Only one alpha coyote in the pen, right?
Yep.
So, well, guys, it's been great, and we will get together next week and do this all over again. So, like I said, make sure you subscribe to us. Make sure you leave a comment. On behalf of Tom McHale, editor of American Handgunner, and Roy Huntington, the alpha super genius coyote in the pack, our special assignments editor, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat, saying adieu.